friends, it's Therese and welcome back to my channel. Today's video I'm going to be talking about some books that I don't always talk about on this channel. So I made quite a bit of a list just because I couldn't decide which books I don't talk enough about, which I feel like is a problem. It's fine. And yeah, let's just get into the video. I would be lying if I said that I really did not feel like pulling out all of the books, because some of them are on this shelf and some of them are in the shelf in the living room. I just did not feel like figuring out which book was where I'm gonna put them back. So I was just like, you know what, we can just take up screenshots, which I'm sure editing Therese is probably gonna hate, because I hate adding like extra little whatchamajiggers, like little things on the screen, because I always forget to expand one or get one of good quality, and it's just a thing. But it's hot right now. The state park that's next to my city right now, Yosemite, is on fire, and there's a lot of smoke and a lot of like dryness, so it's just time to just lay down and be a little lazy. But the first book is actually a paranormal romance / paranormal historical fantasy, and that is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. This is the first book in the Beautiful Ones, I think, quartet. Initially I thought it was going to be a trilogy, and then I think they announced the fourth book and I'm just very confused. But this essentially follows Celine as she runs away from France after some mysterious events unbeknownst to really anyone but herself and her father. She goes to New Orleans to try and figure herself out, start fresh, start anew. That is until she runs into some weird characters that have some weird agendas that maybe they may or may not be human. This is one of my favorites of, I think, I want to say 19 or 20. Yeah, I think 2019 or 20. This is just, I think, it's the revival of vampires. We get vampires in historic New Orleans. We get lots of BIPOC characters in this very like bright and mysterious, like not bright, but very mysterious kind of like paranormal mystery world or paranormal world. It's kind of creepy, kind of not creepy, and it's just fun. It's just generally, it's just a fun read. I loved reading it. I probably will be buying the third book sometime in the future just so I can read it for Trick or Treat-a-thon in October, just because I started the first book in Trick or Treat-a-thon, or the second book for Trick or Treat-a-thon. Might as well just continue on that train. But I love this book so much. I love the series. I was a little hesitant at first because Renee Ahdieh and I did not click very well when I read A Flame in the Mist by her. But I like this book. It's good. You know me, y'all, I'm a slut for paranormal romances, even more so for paranormal history. On top of that, it's also set in New Orleans, which is like the hubbub for like paranormal for paranormal stuff. So it's just like a perfect mixed match of everything that I love. Okay, completely different atmosphere right now, but I'm running out of sunlight. But the next book is Crave. This is a YA paranormal romance following young, I believe her name is Grace. I don't remember, and unfortunately the book synopsis does not tell me what her name is. So it follows young Grace after the events of her parents dying in, I believe, a car accident. She ends up being shipped off to Alaska with her cousin and her uncle, who run a mysterious little like prep school that may or may not have vampires and other like mystical creatures in there. This is not top tier literature. Don't get me wrong, this is not top tier literature by any means. Pacing was weird, love triangle was weird, but genuinely it's just such a fun read, and I blasted through like a book that's about this thick in the matter of a couple of days. And it's, like I said, it was just a very fun read, very entertaining, very enjoyable. And like, it's not like by any means top tier literature. You're not gonna find like a new paranormal romance is going to hit the charts and become a movie, but it is just a very fun and entertaining read, and I highly recommend it if you're just looking for something to just turn your brain off of and just read and just have fun with it and not worry about like any weirdness that may come of books, of vampire books set in certain areas. The next one is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This is an adult kind of gothic horror set in 1950s Mexico, where we follow young Noemi as she rushes to this random, very like hidden town in Mexico after receiving a very distressed letter from her cousin, her newlywed cousin. Here she finds that there's a lot of mysterious and kind of icky things going on in this book. There are quite a bit of trigger warnings for this. I will leave my review for this book linked down below for y'all, but I really enjoyed it. I'm a huge fan of like gothic literature. I love me like a either a book or a movie or a TV show that kind of just has like those little in-betweens of like hints of Gothic literature, or hints of Gothic literature, or hints of like that just kind of very creepy and like unsure vibe. And that was definitely this book. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it a 4 or 5. I don't remember exactly. But this is like had made Silvia Moreno Garcia an auto-buy author for me. So if you're in the mood like sometime around like the winter time or the fall time when Halloween hits for a very slow paced and very like aching creepy book, I highly recommend this. But if you're not the biggest fan of Gothic literature or Gothic horror particularly, with like the long screaming passages, the very slow build kind of creepiness, probably not the book for you, but I absolutely adore it. The next one is Patron Saints of Nothing by Randy Rabai. Yeah, Randy Rabai. This is a YA contemporary following young Jay as he finds out his cousin June has been shot in the Philippines for messing with drugs. Kind of hesitant as to why this had happened, and pretty much sure that his cousin was not dealing in drugs of any sort. He travels to the Philippines during his spring break to get to the bottom of things. Now this touches on a very heavy subject as of right now in the Philippines with the drug war, and just a lot of things that typically aren't touched on in a lot of YA. It touches on a lot of like Filipino culture and like the toxicity of it, and also the beautiful things about Filipino culture. I think I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, or a 3.75 out of 5. There were a couple things I did have issues with this book, but overall I think if you are looking into something that deals with contemporary issues while also giving you a chance to learn more about cultures that are not within your own through a very Western lens, I recommend this book. But also note, this is not a book that encompasses the entirety of the Filipino experience. This is just one experience of one fictional detail, so keep that in mind when you pick up this book. But I do highly recommend it. I think it's a very eye-opening read for a lot of people who like sometimes only see the Philippines like these beautiful beaches and tourist destinations and forget that the politics and the beautiful parts of it, the politics kind of ruin the beautiful parts of it and have made a mess with things of the people living there currently. So the next one is The Rise of Kyoshi by F.C. Yee. This is a kind of a spin-off book from the original Avatar, following Kyoshi, who is one of the avatars, one of the many avatars in Aang's line and Korra's line, and is actually I believe one of the more brutal ones, following more brutal notions of justice. This follows her as she becomes Kyoshi and gets up to that point. I really enjoy this book. I am always hesitant about books from like famous like cartoons or comic books, or sometimes both turned into a book, just because sometimes I feel like the message it always tries to downplay it and make it for a younger audience, a lot younger audience, and sometimes loses kind of like the overall sense of the character and the overall sense of their journey. I really enjoyed this book. I think I need to continue on with the trilogy, but I think it captured kind of the beginnings of Kyoshi very much so, where she's just very confused and not sure of what she wants or what she's supposed to do, and is just very much stuck in this very weird in-between of doing what's right and what she needs to do as the Avatar versus what she kind of like what she should be doing, if that makes sense, or what she wants to do. I highly recommend it. I will be continuing on with the series. I just gotta finish up a couple of other series first. I'm almost there. I will get there. Don't worry. The next one is Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala. This is the first book in I think a series following young Lila as she moves back to her small town to help out with her family's restaurant after a really bad breakup with her fiance. There, she kind of runs into her ex-boyfriend of high school, like her high school sweetheart, and they don't get along at all. Now, he is a food critic, so he comes to the restaurant to like taste the food and yada yada yada, and he ends up dropping dead the next couple of minutes due to a dish that she had given him herself. Now, since usual, the cops aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing, she ends up taking it upon herself to figure out exactly what happened to her ex-boyfriend and to clear her and her family's name. I love this book so much. Like, if there was one way to describe the Filipino experience, it's through food. It's through food and family. I loved that we got to see Lila really just kind of struggle with what she wants to do in terms of like protecting her family and helping her family versus what she kind of needs to do, which is branch out and do her own thing. I enjoyed this very cozy thriller. I will be continuing on with this series. Again, just wrapping up with some other series as of right now before I can pick up other books, because that is where my life is right now. It's just finish books so I can continue reading books from other series. It's fine, I'm fine. But I highly recommend it. This is the debut for Mia. Mia is such a sweet person. I adore her on the Twitter interactions that I have had with her, and I just recommend this book to everyone who may be in need of a cozy mystery, because I think the lens of showing things through food and the recommendations and the recipes in here are just done beautifully, and I highly recommend it. The next one is one that I read back in like 2019, 2018, and that is This Is How You Lose a Time War by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. This is an adult sci-fi dystopian almost, following these two agents for different outcomes of this like very like I think environmental war, Red and Blue. They fall in love and start using like letters that they've stuck in between moments of time to communicate between each other. I almost give this book like a 3. It was just very slow and very much like I was just not understanding what was going on, what the romance was. And then the ending just absolutely hits you in the gut. Like, you don't think you're attached to these characters until, at least I didn't think I was attached to these characters until about the very end when the plot twist happens. And I was like in my car in like the middle of like, I think like January or something, and just sobbing because it was just so beautifully done and beautifully written. And I absolutely adored this book, and it's probably like one of my favorites of all time. Very up there. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I highly recommend this book if you guys have not picked it up or even heard of it, which is weird because I feel like this book circulated around BookTube a couple years ago and was very popular then. And the last book is actually The Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I know you're all probably going, Therese is a very popular book. This is a YA, I guess, futuristic sci-fi fantasy following young Nova as she has her powers of her own and works for a group called the Anarchists. Now, in order to infiltrate and take over, she ends up going undercover to join the superheroes. This follows superheroes and their children, and it's very fun. It's emotional. Like, I read the second book, or I finished the second book on my trip to Oakland this weekend, and I nearly screamed. But I really enjoyed this series. I will be picking up the third book very, very soon and reading it very, very soon and finishing up the trilogy. But I love this mainly because of the fact that it's superheroes. I love superhero books. I love my superheroes. But my issue with a lot of superhero books is that they just take the same superheroes from like DC or Marvel and rewrite them and turn them into like stories like that are more palpable, that are not as like comic booky and just prose. But this one is interesting in the sense that we get to see different superheroes, different sets of powers, different backstories, different everything. And it, like, all the romances and the character relationships and friendships just build and build and build, and there's just so much tension all the dang time that I can't handle it. I genuinely cannot handle it. And if I didn't go on an overnight trip to a concert in California, and if I didn't go to an overnight trip in California of all places, I probably would be holding up my the copy of a third book right now, because it's just that good, and I hate myself for not having picked this book up anytime sooner, because it's just like a beautifully written book, and I absolutely adore this, like 100%. Highly recommend the book series. Highly recommend the book series if you haven't. I highly recommend the book series if you haven't picked it up yet. It's just that good. But that is it for the books that I really don't talk about. Like, I was looking at this list and I was like, I really just don't mention these books as often as I would like, or because I just forget. One of the two. But if you guys like to see these books recommendations where I talk about books I don't often talk about, let me know in the comments below, and I'll make it more of a frequent thing, like a 6-month or a yearly check-in. But until then, if you guys have any other requests for videos, or if you have read these books, let me know in the comments. And until next time, hopefully you guys are having a good weekend, and bye.